Hello, my friend. Take a seat here by the fire because I got a heck of a story to share with you. Let's just say it's not a good idea to simp over another person's wife. That guy nearly ruins a one-shot by simping over my wife, causing whole party to turn on him. r/rpg horror stories, posted by Abaddon Dessler. Okay, so this was a one-shot at a convention a friend of mine was running as his first foray into DMing. It looked like a module, but I don't know the name. Basically, a load of goblins had been stealing from travelers and were taking it back to a cave network where it turned out they were giving it to a dragon for its hoard. The players in this drama are me, male human fighter, my wife, male dwarf barbarian, the DM, my sister-in-law, female half-elf rogue, a random girl that wanted a go, the same female half-elf rogue, and problem, male elf cleric. Game has 4 set characters. Normally, I would play the cleric or the barbarian, but as I was the most experienced and have been GMing for a long time, I said I would take what was left to fill out the party and help the GM or new players if there were any problems, or if they needed advice. By rule of ladies first, and my sister-in-law and the other girl, whose name I don't remember, not knowing what to do meant my wife picks first, and she decided to play the dwarf barbarian to try something different to rogue. My sister-in-law and the girl had been talking and asked if they could both play the half-elf rogue so they could confer on what to do as they hadn't played before. DM says that's okay, and my wife offers to help them as rogue was her main class. Then that guy goes next, as I'd been okay with, and I had been telling him earlier that I main cleric and it's a fairly back of the party role and responsible role. He picks elf cleric. Fair enough, that leaves me with the human fighter. Now before I get into the session, I should mention there had been other red flags with that guy, so I will list a few of the big ones. Repeatedly talking over any women he was nearby while proclaiming how much of a feminist he is. Telling us that marriage and monogamy is an outdated and sexist concept of the monogamous patriarchy. My wife was my fiancée at the time. Spent almost 10 minutes arguing why he should have won a round of Cards Against Humanity because he was smarter and wouldn't accept that my sister-in-law's was funnier as a reason. Rejected alcoholic drinks that were brought to the table we were at as I was a guest at the event because alcohol weakens the mind. Explaining to my Irish friend how stupid the troubles in Ireland were when my friend's family were on both sides and lost family during the troubles. Telling my wife how much she reminds him of a character from My Little Pony who appears to have severe social anxiety. My wife has severe clinical anxiety and has been in therapy for years to get better, so being compared to this character did not help, and we found out he has a huge crush on that character and even has porn of that character on his phone. He told me that my wife was good how she was and I should stop trying to turn her into something she isn't. Note, the something she isn't is confident. She likes being around people and handles her anxiety. The how she was quiet, scared, meek, and had panic attacks round the clock just from being near her friends and family. Never mind a convention of almost 3,000 people. There are a lot more, and this guy had been in our group for years, and we just couldn't get rid of him. Partly because most of us wouldn't tell him to sod off because they were shy, and the three of us that would have didn't like to because he had a ton of issues, and we just felt sorry for the guy. Back to the campaign. As soon as the game starts, that guy who is playing the cleric decides to take every opportunity to get in the way of my wife, who is playing a dwarf barbarian wielding a +1 great axe, +3 against goblins. He has a sling and a scimitar and decides that as a man of God, he must be on the front line. I tried to gently explain to him that that was a bad idea. He was a purely healing and buffing cleric, no damaging spells, that he wasn't working with the party, and continually dragged out every fight longer than it should have by getting in the way, trying to take hits for my wife's character, and occasionally the two girls' rogue, though not as often. He ignored everything, even when I suggested fighting from the back line with the rogue, who, by the way, were playing amazingly. Between the two of them, they came up with really creative situations, pinged enemies from the back line, and got the hang of backstabbing really quickly, as me and my wife were the front line and we needed ranged support. He continued to physically get in the way to defend the barbarian dwarf and try to attack high-level enemies. The table is getting angrier, the DM is losing control and getting disheartened, and my wife is furious at him, to the point where this normally very shy and quiet woman starts to almost screaming at him to get to the back or she'll chop his head off and we'll go on without him. No one but him and me argued with that idea, but it continued until he became so much of a problem and we only had the table for about 30 minutes more and we weren't even halfway through the dungeon. Finally, I passed a note to the DM. I tied the cleric up and carry him. He made me make a roll for both, and there it was. I had to bend my bow and hand out some of my potions, but that was fine. The rogue girls were ecstatic to get the bow rather than throwing knives. We carry on, occasionally swapping between my fighter and my wife's barbarian. Looking back, he tried to make escape checks a lot less often when my wife's character was carrying him, which has just skeeved us both out at the thought. Meet the boss of the dungeon, a goblin chief riding a spider. Perfect! I dump the cleric and tell him to stay there out of trouble. The fight begins, and that guy is constantly trying to escape until he does. He charges past the rogue on 2 HP, runs past me dealing with 3 goblins and on half HP, and puts himself directly between my wife's barbarian, who was at full HP, and the goblin chief she had been preparing a big attack for, an attack that would deal 3d8 plus 10 damage to this goblin chief. He took the damage from the goblin chief, 1d6 with d6 poison damage, and it nearly floored him. This attack would have barely scratched my wife's barbarian, because of course it wouldn't. She was a barbarian and a dwarf, and had advantage against goblins and poison. After I finally lose my temper with him, and my wife having to move her character model and charge the attack a further 2 rounds, the fight was done, and we won, and I ordered him to heal the rogue while my wife and I take health potions. He still tries to heal my wife's barbarian, who had taken a total of 2 points of damage. which was completely his fault for getting in the way and dragging out the fight and forcing her to suffer an attack of opportunity. But she has her dwarf physically slap him, and in character scream at him, and he does as she says. Even me and the DM were done with this guy's shit at this point, and we had 10 minutes left. We cleared over half the dungeon in 20 minutes when he was tied up, when before that it had taken us almost an hour and a half to get to the halfway point because of him slowing us down. This is when the DM shows us what was meant to be an epic dragon fight at the end of the dungeon. The dragon flies away to speed things up, which pisses us all off. This results in one of my first time in-character turns, PvP and the rogue using a bag of goblin heads they had gotten off my wife during one of our trades of carrying the cleric. She had been collecting the heads in a burlap sack for serial killer reasons. Join in as we lay into the cleric until he is dead and bleeding. While the barbarian stole all the loot, we would take his money and then claim that the goblins killed the cleric, while we curse his name to oblivion. He complained to anyone that would listen, but by that point I took everyone away and ran a game of Made RPG to calm down and refuse to let him join in. I felt bad later and would later apologize to DM for how things went down, but he told me he was happy because that guy apparently had done the same thing the day before and learned nothing, and would proceed to get in the way of combat to save the lovely lady he was crushing on, even if she was playing a dwarf barbarian or dragonborn paladin, until he was finally told he was banned from joining in any of the one-shots being run at the convention due to dragging the games out and making sessions late/not finish due to time constraints. I would later lose contact with that guy, and I don't regret it one bit after he sent a plush of the same MLP character he fetishized and told my wife she was like to my wife under the guise of a birthday present. Her birthday is in August, and he sent it in June. TLDR, that guy Simp plays cleric and tries to protect my wife, ruining the campaign, and then gets butthurt after we kill him in-game and refuse to let him simp all over a game of Maids RPG. Wow. Just wow. I'm actually surprised that guy wasn't kicked out of the group earlier, and while I try not to kink shame, telling another person's wife that they are like the character that they fetishize and have porn of on their phone is majorly creepy. Whew, heebies and the jeebies. That guy/those people need to learn to read the room and take a hint. And that's our story. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more future content. Also, if you would kindly follow the socials posted in the description, that would be amazing. As always, be good, be great, be awesome.